I broke my ankle about a year ago, and now I'm trying to decide if I should have the surgical hardware removed, and I need your help to decide. So about a year ago, I broke my ankle from a downhill skating accident. I have another video about it, which you can check out. It's now been almost 12 months since my surgery, and I've mostly recovered. I'm now able to do most things that I was able to do before the accident. There are mainly just two issues that I need to work on. The first is that my right ankle still feels kind of wobbly compared to my left ankle. My right leg overall, like my knee and my thigh, are much stronger than my left leg. And that's because I skate, and I skate goofy, so my right leg is in front, but it's just the ankle. My right ankle is just much weaker and more wobbly compared to my left. The other issue is the limited range of motion in my ankle. The limited range of motion seems to be in every direction: dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, and the other directions, which I don't know what to call them. Basically, every direction has limited range of motion. But the only one that really bothers me is the dorsiflexion, which is the foot bending upward. It doesn't really affect my daily life. Like, I can walk, I can run. Well, I don't really run, but if I wanted to run, I think that's something I can work on. For most activities, you wouldn't be able to tell that I'm recovering from a broken ankle. The thing that I'm not able to do is crouch down, like doing a low squat. And that's the main reason that I wanted to get the hardware removed. You see, because I can't compress my body that much, it makes doing glove down slides more difficult. And basically any other move that requires crouching down or compressing the body is difficult, or basically not doable. My range of motion has improved since my surgery. It's just, it hasn't improved as much as I'd like. I feel like the progress has been really slow, and I'm not sure if it's because of the ankle hardware. I've talked to multiple people about this, doctors, physical therapists, and some have said that if I remove the hardware, my range of motion might improve. It's not definite, but it might. And others have said that it's not going to improve. So, not sure. I've come up with a list of reasons for removing the hardware and against removing the hardware. Let's start with against. So the first reason against removing the hardware is that it requires going through another surgery. Some people feel that surgery should always be a last resort, because anytime you have surgery, it comes with life-threatening risks. So if you don't really need to have surgery, it may be best to skip the surgery. The second reason is that recovering from this surgery is gonna take about 2 months, because once the screws come out, there are gonna be holes inside my bones that need to fill up, and that's gonna take roughly 2 months. So during the first month, I probably wouldn't be able to skate at all, and during the second month I can probably skate a little, but I need to keep it easy. My range of motion improvement has been slow, but it hasn't completely plateaued. It has plateaued at some points. In fact, I feel like it's plateaued right now, but there have also been times where there have been measurable improvements. So I feel like if I continue to work on it, I can still improve the range of motion. While my limited range of motion prevents me from doing certain things like crouching down and certain movements for skateboarding, for my day-to-day life, it hasn't really affected me that much. Like I said, for most activities, you wouldn't even be able to tell that I'm recovering from a broken ankle. By some standards, I think you can say that I've fully recovered. The only thing is I want to be able to crouch down and, bend my ankle more. And the final reason against removing the hardware is that there's no guarantee that removing the hardware will help me improve my range of motion. It's possible, but it's also possible that it'll make no difference at all. And now the reasons for removing the ankle hardware. The ankle hardware removal is a quick and simple procedure that takes only about 15 minutes. Compared to other surgeries, the risk is relatively low. My range of motion recovery may be quicker with the hardware removed. Again, it's not a guarantee, but the possibility is there. Some people experience discomfort from their surgical hardware due to changing weather. I've heard that when the weather's cold, you can feel it in the hardware. I saw a video that said that some people can predict the weather because of the hardware. Like when it's about to rain, they know beforehand. Probably doesn't affect everyone. And someone told me that the hardware can get bigger or smaller depending on the weather, so it can cause a lot of pain. I'm not sure if this would affect me, but if I have the hardware removed, I wouldn't have to experience that. Keeping the hardware installed could lead to other issues down the road. For example, they could get infection. I don't know if this would affect me because I've already had the hardware for about a year. Another possibility is that the hardware could break. I imagine that the chance of them breaking is probably the same as the chance of the bone breaking, or maybe even less. So I'm not too worried about that. Another thing I heard is that the bone could end up growing around or on top of the hardware. And if that happens, then you have to have surgery to have the hardware removed. And they gotta grind through the bone. And when they're grinding through the bone, they could end up breaking the bone in the process, which just makes things more complicated. So that sounds pretty scary. I'm sure the chance of that happening is pretty low, but if I have the hardware removed, I don't have to worry about that at all. Which leads me to my final reason for removing the hardware. If it's removed, then I don't have to think about it. I don't have to think about whether my limited range of motion is because of the hardware. I don't have to feel the hardware, because right now I can, like, if I touch it, I can actually feel it. I also experience a little bit of soreness. It doesn't bother me that much, but it's like always there. Like, I'm constantly aware that there's hardware in my ankle. So right now, I don't know if the hardware is causing my limited range of motion. If I remove the hardware, I can at least remove that as a possibility. And in a way, I guess you can say remove that as an excuse for myself. So those are my reasons for and against removing the hardware. There's one more thing I want to talk about though, which is expense. My understanding is that most people in the US don't remove their surgical hardware, but I think that probably has a lot to do with insurance and the cost of healthcare in the US. Because hardware removal is usually not essential, I'm guessing that it's usually not covered by health insurance unless it's an emergency. So I believe that's why people in the US mostly keep them installed. That's my guess anyway. As for myself, while I am an American, I'm living in China. I'm not a Chinese citizen, so I don't benefit from the socialized healthcare. I would have to pay for this surgery by myself. But even so, the cost of this kind of surgery here would only be about $1,000 to $2,000. It's still a chunk of money, but nowhere near the cost it would be if I were to do this in the US. Anyway, those are my reasons for and against removing the hardware. Not sure if this helped out any of you, but I don't know, maybe it gave you something to think about. If you have personally gone through something similar, like you've had hardware installed, maybe you decided to keep them in or you decided to remove them, I would highly appreciate it if you leave a comment and talk about your experience with that. I was actually going to have my hardware removed this week or maybe next week, but one of my Patreon supporters talked me out of it. He's actually a physical therapist and he convinced me to at least put it off for a while. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna postpone it for at least a month, and in the meantime, I'll try to put more time into the ankle rehab and see what happens in the month. If there's notable improvement in my range of motion and I feel like I'll continue to improve without removing the hardware, maybe I'll just keep the hardware in. But if I feel like the progress has stalled, I'm thinking I'll probably get the hardware out. But still, I would like to have as much info about this as I can. And for such a common issue, I feel like the information regarding broken ankles seems kind of limited on the internet, which is, I don't know, seems kind of weird. Anyway, thanks for watching. Stay safe.